The global insurance industry is more than a market.
It's a movement powered by 3 million professionals around the world.
Together, we support communities as they rebuild after disaster.
Help businesses through risk and uncertainty.
Protect individuals as they plan for brighter futures.
This impact isn't possible without people.
That's why we attract, grow, and retain the very best talent.
Because when every voice is heard,
When every person feels they belong.
We don't just build careers.
We build a better tomorrow.
Belonging builds tomorrow.
Belonging builds tomorrow.
Belonging builds tomorrow.
Belonging builds tomorrow.
Belonging builds
Belonging builds tomorrow.
Belonging builds tomorrow.
And welcome to our dive-in panel session this afternoon, Performance Through People. For those in the room, welcome to Canopius. We're delighted to have you here. For those online, we will be delivering this session in partnership with our colleagues from Antares Global and from Lockton's, and we'll have a panel discussion later this afternoon. At Canopius, inclusion is absolutely core to our company culture and central to our talent strategy. So I'm excited that this session provides us an opportunity to explore how creating a sense of belonging is essential to building individual and team performance. Our keynote speaker today is Olympic performance psychologist and mindset expert, Dr. Kate Goodger. She will be talking about the science of belonging in inclusive, high-performing teams, both from a psychological perspective, but also a practical perspective. This will be followed by a panel conversation where we'll be joined by our colleagues from Antares and Lockton, and who will bring their diverse perspectives and experiences, and together we hope to create an interesting and actionable conversation this afternoon. So thank you again for being here. We're looking forward to a good discussion. And so without further ado, please join me in welcoming Dr. Kate Goodger. Thank you.
Right, hello and good afternoon. So I'm a psychologist which does one of two things for people. They either are at a family barbecue and they say, Kate, you're a psychologist, yeah, I'll see you later, and I never see them again. Or alternatively, they lean in and ask, are you analysing me? And to that I like to say, yes, I am, because it mainly plays with people's minds and it's quite fun for me. But it's interesting watching this room dynamic, and until these brave stupid fellas sat in the front, you know, their physiology and biology was working for me wonderfully. Then I've got a couple of tactical people here that are ready for a sharp exit should they need. They didn't realize that's the volunteers corner, and then we've got a bouncer over there to stop any of you from leaving. So if that's putting you on edge, brilliant, because I'm trying to activate your psychology and biology within this session. So in my career in Olympics, belonging for us is not a D&I initiative. Belonging is central to how people perform. It's really simple. If we do not feel a genuine sense of belonging, your performance will be suboptimal. In fact, there's no kind of, you can hit occasionally, you can get some results from it, but consistent performance, which is what high performance is only achieved from that. So I had a really wonderful discussion with Kate preparing for this around inclusion and what does it really mean. So what I'm going to try and give you is a different way of thinking about it in terms of how are we built and structured in order for us to really understand the value of belonging, and then what can you do about it. So in terms of belonging for us, we're going to try and do three things, if my clicker wants to work. We're doing really well with tech, so anybody online, if you're still with us, thank goodness. Lucy, you may have to click for me because we're not clicking. You could just help with that. And click through again for me. Thank you. So we're going to try and look at belonging from three perspectives. One, the biological basis, so how is it made up? Second, it is either a performance enhancer or it's a derailer. It's not anything in between. So if you truly belong, then that's going to help performance. If you feel a sense of isolation, exclusion, that's going to lead to underperformance. There isn't a middle ground. That's from my applied experience. And the last thing is it's an intentional thing. So we have to act, we have to think about it, we have to pay attention to making it possible for others. Lucy, if you can click on for me. Okay, magic time. Pick a card, any card. Quick, because the cards are going to go. Pick a card, any card. You got it? People online, pick a card. Ready, Lucy? Click. It's gone. How did that happen? Amazing. So that's the first thing. Second thing, fastest as possible in the room, online, fastest fingers possible. I want you to tell me what you see as soon as this image comes up. Shout out the first thing that you see. Okay, if you're quiet, I might pick on you, so make sure you shout. Okay? Right, first thing that you see when you click this next image. What do you see? Cigarette, old man, old woman, young woman. Okay, looking away. Right, so we've seen a contrast of images. You should see either an older figure or a younger figure. So the older figure has the cigarette in their mouth. For the younger figure, they're turned slightly away, so the nose is actually the cheek. Your brain will struggle to see both at the same time. You'll be moving between the two. Last one. Click onto the next one for me, Lucy. When you look at this one, you should recognize the basis of this being the Union flag. And the colors have been taken out deliberately. So focus hard on this image. I want you to focus on the center of it and get your rods and cones really working in your eyes. So focus really hard on it, because in a moment we're going to take it away and you're going to tell me what you see. So keeping focus, I'm going to count down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Take it away, Lucy. A number of you will have seen what colors? Red, white, and blue. So there will have been a projection. That is a blank page. So the magic trick, the visual image, the flag, that's all to show you that how you think your brains work and operate is not how they work and operate. There's a whole load of processes that are happening that are not conscious to us. And it's not about psychology, it's about biology. So if we click on, please, Lucy, because this always happens. I do the magic trip and people cannot listen after the session because all they're interested in is the answer. So I'm going to give the answer early doors. If you look at that and then look at the next one, if you click on Lucy, what do you notice? They're not the same deck. They're not the same deck. So it's a simple thing where I've just confused your brain because sometimes we put 2 and 2 together and we get 7. So what I'm going to do with you is just debunk a little bit of our understanding on the brain. So with that in mind, if you click on for me, please, Lucy. So as we go through the session, I'm just going to give you some ideas to hold on to. So the first is that our world is constructed. So if you close your eyes just for a moment for me, if you just close them, that's the state your brain is operating in every second of the day. You can open your eyes again. So you don't actually see this room. You're not actually seeing me in real time. What's happening is you're processing data externally, you're matching it internally, and that's how you get orientation in the world. So actually our brain is predictive, it's anticipatory. So if I describe a green apple for you, and the green apple looks really lush, it looks really crisp, as you bite into the apple, what might you experience? Just crunch, what else? Juicy, flavor. So all of that is you haven't actually got an apple in front of you, but you're anticipating what it's like. So that's how your brain is operating. So if we think about that around belonging, we can start to understand the importance of it as a foundation for performance. So I said phones at the ready. Phones at the ready, please. We're going to Mentimeter if we can. We hope with technology. If not, we will talk to each other because that's what human beings are able to do. Think of a time when you have been excluded on the outside. And I want you to really think of a comfortable moment. If you have never been excluded and never been on the outside, you may need to do a little bit on self-awareness because maybe it's you that has caused others to feel on the outside. But think about that team that it just sucked. You're in a team and you weren't able to make a full contribution. It was tough going into work. You may have felt undervalued, undermined, unseen. What did it feel like? Let's just get an impression of that. And if you've completed, have a quick read. So there's some powerful words on there already. And we're asking individuals to perform in this context. Great, thank you. We've got about another 20 to come. Well done, Luce. It's working. It's great. Okay, let's get a couple more to come in. So look at those words. The smaller ones that might be feeling hollow. That's a powerful word. Not enough. That lack of confidence. Defeated. Powerful. Forgotten. Hypervigilant. Love that. I'm going to talk a lot more about that. Defeated. Upsetting. So we could in some ways pause there, because I would say to you, so how are you going to achieve performance if that is how somebody is feeling? That's why we're suboptimal, but I'm going to show you it gets worse than this. So if we're in a little bit of a dip, madam, it's going to get worse before it's going to get better. So in terms of us going through on that, we'll click on if we can. And go again. Can you go again? So in the room, can you put your hand up if you are a boss of any description, if you're a leader? Okay, the rest of the room, have a good look at these individuals. Okay, so let's get ready to look at the impact of a boss on individuals. Your technology is not with us. Okay, so I will go a little bit old school. For my generation, this is called paper, and it can be quite effective when the world's electricity or technology is not helping us. So just to help your kind of understanding, what's the impacts of bosses? So 3 out of 4 people would say that, are you okay? You're going to go down one? Okay, so is it live to go? Okay, so if this is live to go, let's go with it. You've got a second question here. Thinking about the word cloud, lonely, defeated, on the outside, what impact did that have in terms of your contribution? If you're at this end of 100%, it was just really hard to do anything. You're at that top end, you felt completely disempowered. If it was a mild effect, it's going to be down here towards the 40 or the 20%, which is option 5. So where did you sit on that? What was the impact on in terms of decision making, creating, innovation? Where would you rate yourself? So again, the 100% is, yeah, it was just consuming. I really wasn't able to be effective at all. Down to the other end, it had some impact on me. Where would you put yourselves? Is it working for you at the mentee end? Okay. Let's go on. Let's go on. Okay, let's go to this. You're giving away my best punchlines, Lucy. Okay, while that's coming up, let's go top left for those, if you can't see, but hopefully the writing's big enough. 3 in 4 employees say that bosses are the most stressful part of their work, so 75%. A fair number. Top right, 65% of employees would take a new boss over a financial change for them, increase. These two are quite painful to read. 22 months to recover from having a bad boss. Has anybody ever had a bad boss? Okay, anybody kind of remember that quite vividly? Yeah, so it's years. It stays with you. And does it affect future relationships? Yes. Does it affect how you lead? Very probably. Go again? Yep, thank you. And then last one. So when we think about the impact of work and life on us, it can have a compounding impact around other diseases. Certainly coronary heart disease, lots of research in relation to stress in work and bosses in particular. 30% of people develop coronary heart disease. Let's keep going because we're depressed. Let's get even worse. So in this part, at the center of the word cloud was a really powerful word. Anybody remember what it was? Lonely. So let's look at the impact of loneliness. So here's some current data. Study came out last year, if you click through for me, Lucy. So 32% of senior managers feel lonely at work. Of the Gen Zers, I think that's the right generation, 39%. The impact of loneliness in work or typical across a given population globally is equivalent to 15 cigarettes a day in terms of stress on the body. Imagine that, being lonely impact 15 cigarettes a day. Reduced lifespans, so premature death is associated with loneliness. Research on 3 million studies or 3 million cases of premature death. Obesity was 30%, loneliness 60%. So these aren't fictitious figures. Again, going back to how essential is belonging and inclusion, paramount. And in the time that we're going to speak, and with our panelists today, 100 deaths in the UK will have been associated with loneliness. for all different kinds of reasons, because it brings about other health conditions when we're lonely. We overeat, we isolate, we don't take care of ourselves. So the basis of the belonging that we're talking to is absolutely biological. If we click on Lucy, and let's share a little bit of the mechanics. So neuroscience is amazing. I'm a neuroscience geek, but you need to just know some basic things. So the first is we're wired around risk and threat. You've probably heard about that before. And we have approach behaviors and we have avoidance behaviors. And there are two mechanisms that help to really guide that. One is the hardwiring around survival, and the other is hardwiring around belonging. So survival, we're talking fight, flight, freeze. So it's those moments when you've got to go and see the boss and it's not great news. Some of you might notice heart rate increases, and it can be a difficult conversation if it's a bad boss or a tough boss. If there's a client, it's a really important picture, a really important engagement, and you can see within the first few seconds you've lost the client. They're no longer with you. It's when you get tough news or you get that phone call in the middle of the night. So this mechanism in us is really important because it keeps us safe, but sometimes it gets overplayed and it's inappropriately used. My best example of that was on a business trip recently in Sydney. Very fortunate. I'm in Manly. Here's my hotel. Here's the balcony. Here's the road. Here's the beach. You guys are the sea. So I'm in my room Saturday morning and this alarm goes off and it's like an air raid warning. I had no clue what it was. My heart rate is through the roof. I look out onto the water and there's people running out of the water. What do you think it was? Shark. So there's a shark in the bay there. Bearing in mind, I'm in a bedroom, there's a balcony, there's a road, there's a beach, there's a sea. I'm not even anywhere near it, but my heart rate is still going. So sometimes our survival can be overplayed. And on the other side, the belonging and connection piece, that's about enabling us to be optimal in how we survive. If we connect with others and we belong to something, there's a greater chance of survival. So we already looked at the loneliness data. It's paramount to our health and our well-being. It's not a nice to have, it's a performance necessity. From a physiological perspective, what are some of the features that we can see? Those wonderful cortisol spikes when you don't feel secure. So when you think about fight, flight, freeze, you might think about adrenaline, but the one to watch out for is cortisol. If you are marinating in cortisol, it reduces immune function. It increases the likelihood of some of those diseases that we just touched on. Colon cancer, diabetes, coronary heart disease, all associated with heightened cortisol levels. So if we feel on the outside, that's what's activated in somebody's system. If we contrast that to when we feel a sense of belonging and connection, we get these great releases of dopamine and oxytocin. And you might have heard of those because people often in the public talk about dopamine as the feel good. For business, I'd go a little bit further. Dopamine is essential to learning. And I don't mean L&D learning. I mean, if you go in with that client and you notice that data isn't hitting the point it needs to, that's learning. So if you do it again, the client's not going to be more convinced. You have to think about how would I go about that differently. Equally, if you're giving performance feedback to somebody and it makes no difference, that's learning. So dopamine and oxytocin are actually really critical to how we perform. It's not just about feeling good. When we're in this state here of survival, our attention is narrower, it's more internal, it's reactive, it's emotive. And we're going to find it hard to make clear decisions. When we feel a sense of connection and belonging, we're more creative, we're more engaged. We will take risks, but they're calculated, informed risks because we're likely to see the bigger picture. So if we're oscillating between these states, that's where your performance is going to do the same. And it's simply because of this foundation principle of neuroscience. And that's, we make the assumption that we are thinking machines first that feel. Can you put your hand up if you have children? Can you keep your hand up if you've ever lost it with your kids? Yeah, that's a real thing. If you haven't, please help us at the end and coach us how you don't lose it. I've got a 13 and 14-year-old at the moment. But if you've ever had a moment when you've said something a little bit too far, a little bit too harsh, it's in those moments that this machine activates. So we think we're thinking individuals that then feel. No, you are a feeling individual first. So when I asked you, how did you feel when you felt excluded, that's why you said hurt. Lonely, because it's again part of how we can operate at our best. If we move on then and kind of pick ourselves up to the other side, here's the summary around belonging from a performance perspective and a performance environment perspective. Dan Goldman summarizes it really well, that in our brains, it's unable to differentiate what's a real threat from what's perceived threat, hence the magic tricks earlier. That's why your brain can be fooled. Essentially, when we go to work, we're doing two jobs. One is I'm filling in the numbers as an accountant. You can tell I'm not an accountant, but if you're doing those numbers, I'm filling that in, but I'm also concerned about what Kate's evaluation as my line manager is, how I'm looking. Am I making a contribution? Am I competent? Am I capable? Am I trusted? Am I valued? So that's where our brain goes to if we are feeling on the edge or we're feeling excluded with it. So essentially work is about two jobs, doing the actual practical physical job, and then second, how we're seen doing that job. If we click on through, then so what can we begin to do about it? So I said to you before that belonging is either a performance derailer or it's an enhancer. There isn't a middle ground for it. Because in my world, we're always asking the question of how do we optimize performance? When you're chasing Olympic medals, they're the questions that you have to ask. But the majority of the athletes that I work with, their pursuit is not just about the medal, but it's how do I be a parent and an Olympian? How do I get married and be able to go and compete the other side of the world? How do I pay my mortgage? So it's not, if there's people in the room that aren't sporty, no problem, because it's about human beings ultimately. So when we're thinking about it being a derailer or enhancer, what can we then start to do? How could we leverage it? How could we utilize it? So let's look at the data around how belonging helps. So 70% of your performance is made up or influenced by the environment that you're in. Let's just think about that for a moment. It's not a small factor. Anybody like to be 70% more effective? Everybody like to have 70% more time in their diary? Yes, we all love that. But it comes from thinking about how we're orientating our environment. If we're in a constant survival mode, it's not a great use of time, but certainly not a great use of energy. Linked to that, what people see when they're looking at people that have been disengaged and excluded compared to when they feel more included and valued, what's the performance jump? 52%. Anybody else benefit from 52%? 40 use? Maybe. So we're not talking small statistics here. And then you, as in every other, is chasing this down in terms of how do you keep talent? How do you find it? How do you keep it? That is going to get greater. Our population is narrowing, so our labour market is narrowing. The type of jobs people want to go into are shifting and changing. Have you got the best strategies, policies possible? The businesses that are winning have recognised how important this is. They are focusing hard on this area, and they are really trying to innovate in this space. So who are those kind of organisations that are doing that? Here's a couple of examples for you. So top left, Google. When you join Google, you might have heard of the Nooglers. So Noogler is new to Google. Apparently that hat is quite cool. I'm not sure on that yet. But when you arrive, you get this wonderful welcome box. You get a buddy, and they're really conscious in those first 2 weeks of helping you to integrate. Really fascinating one. Zappos, anybody know what they do? Pay to quit. So when you join the business, if you just determine that the culture isn't right for you, you are paid to quit the business. You are paid $10,000 because culture matters in their environment. They know that the sense of belonging, sense of engagement for people is absolutely paramount. So they've built an onboarding system around the idea of paying people to quit. That is a very young Richard Branson looking in the top corner there, but he has championed an initiative within Virgin, which is built by dyslexic thinkers. So he's advocating for how entrepreneurs think differently. What's really interesting is he's talking about the challenge between what an AI can do compared to a dyslexic person. An AI doesn't quite get AI handle neurodivergence. But as a consequence of this, there are now a first of a kind in terms of dyslexic entrepreneur programs within Virgin. They also have a dyslexic university as a consequence of this work. So these are businesses that are thinking from day one, how can we make a difference for individuals in terms of productivity and overall happiness in terms of the work that they're involved in. So when we take those things, I want to ask you this question. What's the best team you've ever been in, and how did you feel? So these are some prompts. Some enthusiastic colleagues gave us these before, but let's add to it. When you've been at your best, a place where it was easy to get the work done, it was enjoyable, you laughed, you maybe made some great mates, you might have met your partner. What's the best team you've ever been in, hands down? And how did it feel then? And look at these words in contrast to lonely, hurt, neglected, forgotten. Okay. So a bit of a contrast between the two. And if you think about productivity, outputs, difference people are making, value creation, those expensive rooms that we have of meetings that are absolutely painful, if you had those environments where people were feeling like this, what might be the difference? So I don't need to make the case, I think, about belonging. I think it makes it for itself. If you even consider your own experiences. The piece I've tried to show you is that in your makeup of your brain, if I do not feel safe and secure with you, I'm going to be distracted. I'm going to focus more on whether I'm safe. I'm not going to focus on getting the job done. And this isn't about pink and fluffy. Sometimes belonging is about having the straightforward conversation. If Bob's really difficult, everybody knows Bob's really difficult, and I tell Kate how difficult Bob is, but I'm not having the conversation with Bob, that's not okay. But if I want him to really belong, I'm going to have the tough conversation about Bob, it's really irritating when you do these things. So when we truly think about belonging, it's about valuing people. That's what sits at the heart of it. So if I gave you 3 things to think about, it would be these. There's a million and one things you can do for belonging, but these are the ones that absolutely matter. If we can click on out of it. Thank you. Do you want to click on again from Lucy? So first thing is to help people feel safe and secure. That is number one. Almost don't do anything else unless they have that. In the world that we're moving in, everybody has talked about VUCA. There's a new one. It's called BANI. Not quite sure I get it. It's about brittle and forgotten the rest, but look it up. But when we're in a world of ambiguity, which is going to continue, that wreaks havoc on our system because our system wants to know what the certainties are. So there's a part around, as leaders, are you clear? Do people know what's expected of them? Do we measure success? But also just spending the time with somebody to help them to feel valued. What does that look like? Thank you, Bob, for that piece of work. Bob, I really valued that input. Just using somebody's name creates a sense of being valued, being seen. So feeling safe and secure. Second is feeling seen, heard, and understood. If we ask people's opinions and then do nothing with it, if we ask for feedback and then it never comes to light again, don't expect people to offer more of that. And equally, if somebody's raging, and they're about to knock on Kate's door, Kate's best thing to do is really simple. Shut up. Which is let them speak. Let them be seen, heard, valued. Once people feel seen, heard, valued, it takes the sting out of the tail. Research with GPs. If GPs interrupt, typically consultations go on longer than 10 minutes. If they don't interrupt, it's within 2 minutes they get to root cause. So sometimes just let them own the space. And when they're done, they're done, they're done. Often they will find their own solutions. Last one, please, Lucy. Feeling valued over recognized. So appreciation is about valuing somebody for who they are, not simply recognizing. If it's recognizing, I work in a couple of businesses at the moment, and the parent-child relationship is amazing. And you get people filling out these terrific reports, which mean absolutely nothing because they want to show their homework. So making sure that we are intentional about helping others to feel safe and secure, valued. Say hello, say good morning, smile. Feeling seen, heard, understood. Take the time if somebody needs to vent, if they need to find secure space with you. And the final one is appreciation over recognition. So appreciating who they are over what they did. Those are the really simple things that we can apply in the belonging setting. Maya Angelou, absolute legend. I think she summarizes it better than I. I've learned that people will forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, but they never forget how you made them feel. Why is that? Our biology. It's not a nice thing, it's an essential thing. If you do not feel involved, included in a team, then you'll never be able to perform optimally. You just can't, because your wiring isn't orientated that way. And you move from the opportunity to thrive to simply surviving. Speaking of surviving, it's a wonderful segue for me to now bring our panelists up here. They've got to survive a round with me of a few hard-hitting questions. I like to pretend I'm like on BBC News or something. I haven't got a sofa, but I've got some chairs. So I would like to invite John, Kevin, up onto our seats. Questions, if that sounds okay? So we've got some questions to ask. We will see how fast we go. If you've got questions, yes, please. More challenging questions, really tough ones. Don't ask me, ask them. If we can make that agreement, that would be amazing. But thank you. Thanks very much for being with us and taking the opportunity. Some questions. If I can, I'd like to ask each of you. We use language like high-performing teams all the time. I'd really like to get an understanding. How do you frame that? How do you define high-performing teams for you? Kate, I'm going to start with you, if I may.
Okay. So I was reflecting on this over the last few days. We met up last week to listen to Dr. Kate and understand how we put that into the context of what we do on a day-to-day basis. And I was reflecting upon a time prior to my time at Canopius, and I practiced about 15 years ago or so, when I found myself in a sales capacity, leading a sales team, which was an unusual place for me to be, and had to pull some teams together to run some fairly large multi-million-dollar bids. And for people who've been involved in bids, there's only one or two outcomes: you win or you lose. Something that you're in control of, someone else imposes it upon you. But actually, you really need to have a good team around about you. And that goes from the person who was photocopying the paper and would be available to be able to do it, right through to the lead sales client advocate who had to spend time with clients and doing things. So, and I reflected upon that time. As a consequence, it ended up quite a high-performing team. But when I broke it down into what were the constituent parts of that, I'd say they were twofold for me. And they were about, first and foremost, being really, really clear across the team about what is the goal and what is the purpose about what we're actually trying to achieve in simple, explainable words that everyone can understand, not psychobabble business speak, down to what are we here for, what does good look like, and what do I need from each of you, was the first part. And then the second part was that these teams were roughly about 20 in size, often coming together at quite short notice, but having to mobilize really, really quickly. So doing simple things, bringing teams together, having no hierarchy, having just an introduction of names, tell me a bit about yourself, let's go grab a coffee, being really honest, this will you make a mistake, because we'll all make mistakes. What you need to do is tell us about it. You need to bring one of your colleagues in to help you with it, really kind of scene setting. And I felt so valued, and I wasn't leading this team, but I felt so valued in those circumstances. And we got to the stage, at the 11th hour, having to pull people in at midnight and pull an all-night shift and things. And we had people giving up time. We had others supporting who couldn't because they had young children. But the openness and feeling of belonging and camaraderie actually meant that we had such a powerful team at the end of this that actually went on to have, believe it or not, statistically, we had better win rates than some of the other teams who'd approached it in a different way. So that sort of stuck with me. And I think those kind of lessons, I hope, a number of my team are here and they may come up with some difficult questions at the end, but I hope I still practice today because it's the basics.
Yep. So clarity of mission, and then all of those mechanisms that created collaboration, but it was absolutely setting the scene was at the start of that. Good luck, Kevin, following that.
Yes, where do I start? I would pick up on one point you said, purpose. I think that's really important. Knowing what you're trying to achieve and just all pulling behind it. But I'd also say I think there's an element also of sort of high support, but also high challenge, because I think that gets the best out of teams as well. If you've got that confidence to challenge each other and to sort of up the performance as a result. But that support side, I was thinking back almost a much more recent example, just little things you pick up on sometimes. We introduced a new IT system very recently. One of our teams, unfortunately, with all the new processes and stuff, was just drowning. I mean, suddenly really struggling. And the thing which really made me very proud of the team was that others quickly rallied around. We looked for some volunteers. We got lots of people who said, yeah, I'll do it, I'll help. Within a couple of weeks, all the backlogs had gone away and the team moved on. And it's just little things like that, I think, are telling, and they're the moments that matter.
Yeah, and it's paying attention to those moments, isn't it? 'Cause you miss the opportunity.
Absolutely.
And it's the chance to reinforce those. Wonderful. Thank you, Kevin. John?
Yeah, so I think there's probably two main aspects that I would want to highlight. The first one being the composition of the team. I think the best teams that I've sort of seen and been part of have had a very high degree of diversity, which I think naturally then brings you know, those broad experiences, different perspectives, different backgrounds, different skill sets to the party. I think that can be really powerful when it's harnessed together for that shared, clear purpose, clear goals. Bringing all those different skill sets together can be really powerful. And the second one would be the environment, which I think we touched on in the talk as well. I don't mean the sort of physical location of where you are, but the environment within the team. So the atmosphere, the culture. Again, I think from what I've seen in the past is a very, successful teams have very high degrees of trust, the psychological safety side of it. And that can then really draw out all the good qualities of collaborating, innovating, high resilience, problem solving, healthy challenge as well in those environments. But setting up those conditions for the team to succeed is massively important as well. And I think for me personally, experiencing that when I served in Afghanistan with the Commando Helicopter Force, we obviously had a very clear mission, very clear goals. I was surrounded by some of them, the best, most talented, experienced people, most resilient people I've ever come across. But the thing that really set us apart in that environment was the sort of spirit and the culture of the unit that we were with. And I think when you can harness, like I said, when you can harness all that together, and that you can support each other, you can challenge each other through difficult situations, through adversity, that's when you really get to high performance in some pretty stressful environments as well. Yeah.
A couple of things I was picking up on there, and with the diversity question, I think we often think it's about ethnicity or gender or neurodivergence. An alternate way to think about it might be, what's the level of cognitive diversity that you have? Because we're in a time where our work is actually idea creation, ideation of that idea, and then execution of it. And it's a time where we're having to do it at such rapid pace, often with no data, no indication of where we're going. So creating the environment for high challenge, high trust, and that relationships that enable people to feel really settled, really paramount to leverage the diversity, because simply having diverse people around the team doesn't necessarily mean it's an effective team. And then the commonality across all three, if we just distill it down, belonging fundamentally is about one unit, and that unit of work is relationships. If we don't have quality relationships, then it's really hard to create any form of belonging. Cool, let's keep going then, because there's always a challenge in teams when you've got an absolute star over here and you've got the rest of the team. So Kevin and Kate, I'm going to pick on you with this one. How do we balance the tension of having kind of a superstar here with trying to create an environment that genuinely feels inclusive and collaborative? Because those two things don't always go hand in hand. Kevin, I'll start with you.
Okay, so I think for me, it's coming back to that diversity point that's been mentioned already. Yeah, it's great to have a superstar, but I think it's helping them and helping the team to work together and actually saying, we all value the diverse things that people bring. So it may look like one person's a superstar at one thing. So I'm not saying I'm a superstar, but I love starting new projects. It gets me excited. I get a real passion for it. I'm pretty useless at the finishing off at the tail end stuff. And yet we need people like those in my teams as well, because otherwise that stuff doesn't work. So the team with the diversity point, actually the superstar for me is that person who's perhaps maybe the quieter person in the back that gets stuff done that I can't do. So helping those people to understand that different people bring different things to the team. An example, I talked about this high challenge, sort of high support model. I worked with an exec team a number of years back, not so long ago, but we actually had an honest conversation about how we wanted to work together, and we came up with some principles about how we would operate. And they included things like, we recognised most decisions we make, you can actually still change your mind. There's very few decisions which are, once done, you can't go back and make adjustments. And off the back of that, we said we really value people actually bringing their views and their thoughts and discussing and actually challenging. And to make it's not personal about the person, it's more, bring out the best ideas, bring out the best challenge. But once we'd agreed on something, we then all got behind it and implemented. And that was a really important takeaway for us. So I think I've just come back to, yes, it's great saying someone looks like an obvious superstar, but actually you definitely need the balance. That will not carry you through time after time again.
Yep, and then it's really wonderful. Actually, there's folks, a CFO saying that he's not necessarily a kind of starter finisher. You don't always get CFOs, in my experience, saying that, but absolutely honest and truth. And I love hearing that, because actually we each have different subtleties to us. It's not just about pure capabilities. What are our traits? What are our mannerisms? What are our habits that serve a team and what don't? So thank you very much for sharing that. Kate,
Oh.
How do you balance it?
Yeah, well, I think it's really interesting when you use the word superstar and the definition of superstar. I go back to the point, you know, that there's a collective goal that we're here to achieve. And for me, it's really important around what contribution does everybody make and what participation do they have. I hate to use a footballing analogy. It takes a team for the person to score a goal, you know, and we need to be able to value and understand all of those participative parts. Yep. So I think we have to be really careful around our language, around the superstars on, I think in a business environment, it's very rarely that they are lone operators and exist or are successful purely as a basis of their own individual contribution. There is usually wider participation and support around about them. And valuing that participation and making individuals aware that you value that participation, I think helps to drive the diversity that we have in teams. But I would hope, you know, the sense of, because I think, as you said in your keynote, we all want to feel pink and fluffy and valued and have a good time at work, but we all remember the time where we didn't feel that. And it's a real barrier to getting things done, apart from making you feel miserable. Yep. And that misery is quite contagious, particularly if you're in a leadership position, because what's the impact that you're then having multiplied across a number? So thinking around participation, thinking about contribution and how that leads to the end outcome rather than just solely rewarding and valuing the end outcome is key for me.
I love that comment on contribution, because we can skip past that, but actually as a leader being really intentional to understand what is the contribution somebody wants to make, where do they think they can best make it, and that helps Kevin to determine actually this person loves detail. So knock yourself out with the detail if that's their interest. But I love that idea, and certainly research where we're seeing more effective leadership in an emergent time is participative decision making that's working. It's not control and command. We are shifting from that to absolutely much more participatory. John, you've not got off the hook. We're going to come to you, and I'm always interested with the military transfer, because there's a great amount that we've learned from brilliant military practice and maybe some less, let's call it evolving.
There's plenty of that.
But really interested to get a sense of your building on that definition idea, the characteristics that you strive for in the team. What are the essential things that you're trying to create?
Yeah, I think there's a whole plethora, obviously, but I'd probably distill it down into three main ones that spring to mind the most. I think accountability, being results driven, and again the diversity point as well. So having lots of different skill sets and people within the team, I think is massively important. So the accountability side of things, I think, is you as an individual within that team clearly understanding what your role is and what your responsibilities are, and holding yourself account and having ownership of those. And then within the team, sort of again back to that trust point and the right environment is being able to hold each other accountable for those expectations, both individually and collectively. I think it's massively important. Results driven probably speaks for itself, but I think that's obviously setting clear goals, clear objectives, the classic sort of SMART objectives. So again, everyone's very clear in terms of what you're trying to achieve, and then just being, you know, laser focused in terms of this is what we're doing, making sure you get it done, focus on the delivery, and ultimately, yeah, it's about getting stuff done for the team and achieving the results that you want to. And then the diversity point, again, as I said before, that's all around, you know, people being able to collaborate, innovate, work well together, and bringing all their different skills to the party as well. So I think some of those are obviously more innate parts of that, and others I think you can maybe sort of nurture and cultivate over time as well with the right leadership in that team environment. And yeah, the only other thing I'd really add to that as well is I think in you know, not necessarily from my military experience, but certainly in my role now, is to be really, really deliberate when you're thinking about how you create and build a team. Both when you're hiring, when you're developing people within your team, developing their careers, is to really think about that mix of the team, you know, all the different attributes and skill sets, so you get that balance right. I think it's very easy to overlook those, but if you can be just very clear in terms of what that team needs to achieve, and that will vary from task to task or project to project, but be really deliberate and intentional in what you're trying to build there, and then get the environment right to be able to see it through as well.
Certainly a difference I noticed from business, that in very public So there's always a conversation about performance. That's why you're on the pitch. In business, I really noticed the versus holding up a mirror. You know, did you understand the task? Did you have the support? Where's the results? How do you go about creating accountability? Because for me, that is, again, foundational to a team, because it brings the clarity point that Kate was talking about. If people don't know what they're accountable for, what they're on the hook for, and we haven't put in the appropriate support, that's just mean. You know, it's not good performance in any stretch. But how do you create accountability in your teams?
Yeah, it's all about setting people up to succeed. I think rather than fail, to state the obvious. It's, you know, are you selecting the right people, the right team in the first place? Do they have the right skills? Are you equipping them with the right support? But I think if you're very clear with someone in terms of, you know, this is your role, these are your responsibilities, this is what I expect from you, managing the expectations both ways. Often, you know, very simple things as well about, you know, repeat it back to me in your own words so we're both clear in terms of what we're trying to achieve here. And then constantly checking in to make sure that you've got the right support. Are you delivering? There's no point just sending someone off and saying, like, off you go, good luck. You know, it's making sure you're constantly giving them what they need to succeed, because it should ultimately be in everyone's interest to do that. And, you know, but it's kind of a bargain in some ways. It works both ways, that you're giving that support and everything you can for them. They've got to do their bit in return as well. Yeah.
Has anybody ever left the meeting without one of those moments of what I was in there, I'm not really sure what. Love that idea. I want to do that with you.
I was going to actually build on the point you made about accountability, because I think there's another sort of aspect to it. Yes, absolutely, people account, therefore there will often be times when you have to bring bad news, and I think those are the moments when it makes the difference. Think about belonging. If suddenly, if you're blamed or in some way, or it becomes fault, and that relationship built.
I think it's important to, it's important at those times to just maybe pause and take a step back and think, well, okay, we've got this to deal with. How are we collectively going to rally around and sort this out? And it's how you come back from that. And I think it can be one of those inflection points where if you handle it badly, you can send someone down a very bad place and destroy a lot of that trust you tried very hard to build. You handle it well, it can actually create a much stronger bond and a sort of, we're all in it together, and now let's go and sort this out.
It's really interesting, the psychology of that, as we can often get into a them and us, even within teams, but when we make a common enemy almost, which is this project, this challenge, this deadline, if it's shifted, yeah, it can absolutely unite a team. So yeah, it makes complete sense. And neurologically, just being able to slow the system, if one of the best things that you can do in your working world day to day is just at moments when the tensions are high is hit pause. Because by hitting pause, you slow your physiology, you slow the brain's pathways, and you move out of that reactive state to maybe seeing more options and collaborating. Cool. Last question from us, so get primed if you have a question. Kate, I've got a peach for you, because if you've got a crystal ball, I would really love to hear the answer on this. But things are moving so rapidly, and the disruption in the workplace is monthly, it's not yearly at the moment. But across the next 5 years, what do you see the key trends being that are going to be able to, that are going to influence these team successes? Let's say in the next 5 years, what are going to be the key challenges, things for us to think about?
Okay, so I'll stick to my area of expertise, as COO. I see the transformational but disruptive and changing impact that particularly AI and technology will have on everybody in this room's role, whether that's around change of a way of working, whether that's about a different way of working, and whether that's around something, the benefits of having an agent or a bot to do things for you can be but that is all about change. And if you've talked about building that sense of belonging with the team, that can be potentially seen as a threat to individuals. And when we're looking at that internally, and you then look at that against a backdrop of externally, our environmental threat, our socioeconomic and political threats, people come to work to have some clarity, uncertainty and ambiguity. So I think leaders will have to be better equipped in the future to be able to not just sense when that belonging is starting to wane a little, but to act upon it. It's no longer acceptable for leaders to know that they can see the individual in the corner who's being a bit loud and perhaps not a positive culture carrier. They have to be seen to be doing something about it, because if that's going to suck the energy out of the team, and if that's going to kind of really start to erode that sense of belonging, there's so many other things that are going on externally and internally that potentially can damage that trust. So I think there's a really strong emphasis on leadership courage over the coming years. But that's why it's hardwiring into not the performance part, as you talked about, but more the emotional and the behavioural part, because that's going to help us to unleash or protect some of that 50% that you were talking about that we're going to require as organisations moving forward. And that's a different challenge, I think, than we've faced in the past.
I love those lenses of the internal business change, depending upon what your AI strategy is and how that shifts, but there'll be other disruptive elements to that. The external world, which is having an impact on each of our inner states. You know, you pick up the news in the morning and it can be alarming, it can be disruptive for people, it's an uncertain time. But I love the challenge of leadership courage, because it's with our challenges like that, when we've got to have the difficult conversation, when we need to challenge, when we need to work for diversity, that's the greatest cognitive load your brain has. So what does your brain do? It finds a shortcut, and I didn't quite see that, or just avoids that, or has those biases. And our body is wired to run a body budget, so we do take those shortcuts. So being intentional with leadership courage, that's a big challenge, but it's probably a challenge which extends to each of us to speak up in a moment where it feels like there's exclusion, and it feels like there's a lack of belonging. So thank you for answering my questions. We've got 5 minutes, I think, Lucy, if there are any questions from the floor. Yeah, please.
So not directed at anyone in particular. There was lots of leaders in this room, and so I think we were all probably slightly scared when we saw that statistic that 3 or 4 people will report that their biggest stress in the workplace is their boss. So what is it that bosses get wrong, or if you want a positive spin on it, what kind of tools, techniques have you guys used to make sure you're not one of those statistics?
Go for it.
However uncomfortable it might be, James, is asking for feedback and creating an environment that people feel safe to be able to provide that feedback without rancor or fear for it. And it sounds easy, but it's quite a difficult, it's a difficult set of circumstances to create where both feel comfortable, because innately we don't. I think as leaders, we have to take and we have to seek better feedback about our impact on others, rather than just the performance that people are contributing.
I'd also think a little bit about sometimes it's lots of little things that you don't notice, and they will all build, because they sort of give it, you have sort of an intentional sense of purpose that you want to spend your time with your people, understand them, be interested in work that they're trying to do and what they're trying to achieve. Because I think there's, again, little things like you just miss meetings with somebody, we've arranged something, you move it around because it's convenient for you, and you forget this is a big thing for them. And I think it's just taking the time to realise leadership is a skill. It's something you have to work at with your people. It's not just about managing jobs and outcomes. So those would be my sort of takeaways.
I'd certainly agree with both of those, but I think one point that was picked up, and I know this is a session on high performance, but it's actually, I think, more importantly, or just as important, how we deal with poor performance in many ways within a team. And I've certainly seen very first-hand experience of that over the recent years in terms of what a negative impact that can have on a team if you're seen to not deal with it as a leader. So I think we've all probably seen either people that are toxic from a cultural perspective, or people that are dragging the team down from a performance perspective, what impact that has on the rest of the team, having to pick up that load or deal with the emotional baggage, all those other sorts of things. And I don't think there's anything worse really for you as a leader being in a position where people are seeing you not dealing with that, when it's so glaringly obvious that something should be done and nothing is done. So to do what's the right thing, and it's amazing how quickly that can change overnight, change the environment in the team, and all of a sudden everyone's uplifted for whatever reason it might be, and then you're you as the leader in that position where you've been seen to do something about it. I think that can be really powerful as well.
Questions, yeah.
Hi. It's not directed at anyone in particular, but a question around your own belonging as you've kind of made it through your careers and now you've made it to the C-suite. How has that shifted for you as individuals?
Yeah, that's something very personal to me, obviously coming from a military background where I had a very high degree of belonging. And I think in all honesty, I've said this many times since I left, is you don't really fully appreciate it until you don't have it. You kind of take it for granted and think it's the norm that you've got all this great things around you and these great people, these great teams. And you come into, very often the case, you come into civilian life or the commercial world and you realize that companies that you might have thought were great, once you're inside them, it turns out it's not quite the case. And for me, I've been on been to a few different places since I've been working in insurance, and I would honestly say it's since I've come to Lockton that I've felt something close to that. And it's brilliant to be back in that sort of environment where you can feel all those great qualities again around that sense of belonging. The culture, we're all pulling in the same direction. Everyone's very team focused, very low ego. So yeah, I think that's, all those sorts of things that I would look for. It's great to find that. I think in simple terms, it just comes down to the people in terms of the quality of the people. I think if you can get that right, by and large, and we don't always, but if you can get it right by and large, then I think you can really create that strong identity, strong belonging, the shared purpose, all those great things as well.
I would probably say, Kerry, sometimes it takes for you to experience a really toxic environment where you genuinely understand how important belonging is into your day-to-day, particularly as a leader. You spend 60, 70 hours of your waking life focused and invested in this. If it makes you miserable, and the people that I enjoy, the things that get me out of bed in the morning, it's not just the work I do, it's the people I work with, the energy I get from people, hopefully the energy I give to people. And certainly, fundamentally, my decision to come to Canopius was based on the team and the people that I'd be working with, probably more so than the work that I'd be doing. And I think that's really, really important.
I'll do quick, we're about to run out of time. I was in the team I've moved into 18 months or so ago. I was 24 years in my previous place. And that was scary. It was genuinely, I remember at the time being quite sort of, this is a scary thing too. But it's what they've just said, it's the people that welcome you, the people that bring you in, the people that suddenly rally around, and suddenly you're off and running, and it's a fantastic feeling.
Close there. Thank you so much for those questions. Really good conversation, and thank you for having me. I've had a ball with you. Thank you to Lucy for the perseverance with the tech, because that was not our friend today. But if we could thank the panel, that would be great. And we'll leave you to